So she maps out this entire network. She identifies what she begins calling the hive, this interconnected web of local activists, digital commenters, and political candidates that she concluded had been using divisive tactics to breed mistrust and consolidate influence in the community since at least 2020.
She saw the whole board.
I am just struck by the staggering contrast in intent here. On one side, you have Leah, whose motivation is incredibly raw, uncalculated, and rooted entirely in personal grief and respect for her father's profession.
Completely emotional.
Right. And on the other side, you have this highly sophisticated, coordinated political machine operating with clear electoral objective.
It is a classic David and Goliath scenario transposed into the digital age. When a coordinated hive swarms a newcomer in a local online forum, their intent is almost always suppression.
They want to shut you up.
Exactly. The goal is to make the social and emotional cost of speaking out so excruciatingly high that the newcomer deletes their post, closes their group, and retreats into silence. It is a digital intimidation tactic designed to maintain a monopoly on the local narrative.
But deploying that tactic against a woman who believes she was literally guided by an archangel to fight for her dead father's legacy?
Yeah.
That is a massive miscalculation.
It was a catastrophic strategic error by her opponents. Honestly, this is a textbook example of the backfire effect in political activism.
Yes.
Well, instead of intimidating her, the disproportionate ferocity of their attacks validated every suspicion she had. It provided her with a tangible, defined antagonist.
It gave her an enemy to fight.
Yes. If they had simply ignored her Facebook group, it might have remained a small digital grief journal that eventually fizzled out as she processed her loss. By aggressively attacking her, they unwittingly forged her resolve and shaped her entire style of activism. They gave her a reason to fight.
And the attacks did not stay confined to constitutional debates about the statues. They didn't just argue about the Bladensburg Cross or the Lemon Test. They went after her personally. They tried to destroy her character.
The Digital Whisper campaign was incredibly vicious and highly targeted.
What kind of things were they saying?
Well, rumors began circulating rapidly through local networks, claiming that her entire persona was a manufactured front. They spread claims that she secretly worked for the mayor's office, or that she was a highly paid political agitator imported from outside the district to artificially stir up pro-statue sentiment ahead of the election.
Which is completely absurd when you look at the reality of her life. She is managing 5 kids, working a regular civilian job, and living in Weymouth.
Right. She hardly has time to sleep, let alone run a shadow campaign.
The idea that she is some shadowy political operative running a black ops campaign for the Quincy mayor's office is laughable, but in a closed-loop digital echo chamber, those lies gain traction.
And it escalated dangerously beyond social media gossip. The intimidation tactics actually breached the digital wall and entered her physical reality.
This part is so wild to me.
Yeah, someone tracked down her actual place of employment and sent a targeted email directly to her workplace, branding her a racist, vile woman.
Oh my God.
This was a calculated attempt to dismantle her professional livelihood and personal reputation based entirely on fabricated outrage.
I cannot emphasize enough how terrifying that escalation is. You go from living a completely private, exhausting, but safe life to suddenly having anonymous strangers contacting your employer, trying to get you fired, and labeling you with horrific accusations.
All because of a Facebook post.
Right. All because you asked a question on Facebook about why a statue of a saint protecting firefighters was blocked. Confronted with that level of organized vitriol and the sudden crushing weight of public rumors designed to destroy her character, Leah was forced to a critical juncture. She had to make a definitive choice.
She stood at a profound crossroads. I mean, the path of least resistance was readily available. She could easily delete the Facebook group, step back across the Four River Bridge, and retreat to her quiet life in Weymouth.
The door she had opened could still be closed.
Exactly. Or she could fully embrace this newly forged identity as a public agitator, step into the arena, and go to war for her cause.
How does a normal person process that? When a private citizen gets doxxed, when their employer is harassed, when they are subjected to coordinated digital mobbing, the natural human instinct is to lock your social media accounts, change your phone number, and hide. How did she rationalize staying in the fight, especially when she didn't even have the power to vote in the city she was fighting for? Where does that stamina come from?
The stamina is derived from deep private reflection and an unshakable alignment with her core beliefs. As she absorbed this intense, highly personal criticism, she didn't waver. Her resolve calcified.
It made her stronger.
Yes. She looked back at that initial moment in the doorway, that visceral spiritual nudge she experienced, and she began to interpret it through a new lens. She realized why her head was turned.
So it all clicked for her.
In her assessment, if she hadn't stumbled across that article, if she hadn't felt that calling to defend the tribute to her father's profession, this entire hidden network of activists and the cynical political machinations driving the local election would have remained completely unchecked in the shadows. She concluded that the ferocity of the pushback was directly proportional to the threat she posed to their narrative control. Her ultimate resolution was absolute. She would not back down, she would not be intimidated, and she would commit herself entirely to fighting alongside the city of Quincy to ensure the police and fire tribute was built.
And her philosophical framework for this fight is remarkably clear and uncompromising. She frames her advocacy entirely as a defense of first responders.
She draws a very hard, distinct line in the sand on this issue.
She does. She looks at the arguments about the Establishment Clause and religious neutrality, and she counters with the demand for consistency.
Right. Her stated belief is that the concept of religious liberty is inherently flawed if it is weaponized to erase cultural symbols of sacrifice. She openly challenges the public and the politicians, stating that if you claim to support police and fire personnel, but you actively refuse to support them in this specific instance, allowing them to be honored by the universally recognized symbols of St. Michael and St. Florian, then your support is hollow.
So you can't have it both ways.
No, for her, you cannot separate the symbol of the protector from the people doing the protecting. The line is drawn, and she demands people choose a side.
When the lawyers look at this case, they see a First Amendment issue. When the city councilors look at it, they see a wedge issue to exploit for votes. But when Leah looks at it, she sees a moral imperative to defend the legacy and the honor of people like her father.
She definitively proved that her historical, emotional, and psychological ties to Quincy were vastly stronger and more legitimate than her Weymouth mailing address.
Even without a vote.
Right. She lacked the bureaucratic power to cast a ballot, but she manufactured the power to project her voice loudly enough to completely fracture the local political narrative the Hive was trying to control.
This transition from a busy mother to a hardened activist fighting an online mob is merely the prologue to a much larger narrative. Because the underlying battle over whether the city of Quincy has the constitutional right to erect statues of St. Michael and St. Florian is far from resolved.
Oh, it is escalating to the highest possible level.
Really? Where is it going?
The initial injunction by Judge Sullivan was just the opening skirmish. The Supreme Court of the United States is officially scheduled to hear arguments on this specific case on May 6th.
The Supreme Court? Wow.
Yeah. The trajectory of a single municipal design choice in a city in Massachusetts, catalyzed by local activists and fiercely defended by a grieving daughter in a neighboring town, is heading to the highest court in the land to test the modern boundaries of the Establishment Clause.
That is just wild to think about.
It is. And we will be devoting future deep dives entirely to breaking down the original ACLU complaint, analyzing the specific legal doctrines at play, and exploring the arguments the Supreme Court will have to navigate.
It is a breathtaking escalation. If we pull back and look at the entire arc of what we've discussed today, it really reads like a thriller. You have a woman whose entire existence was completely consumed by the beautiful, exhausting chaos of raising 5 children.
Was trying to get through the day.
Right. She physically leaves the city limits behind. She changes her license, her address, her voting precinct. But all that geographical distance and administrative paperwork couldn't sever the invisible, deeply rooted threads tying her to her hometown.
The profound, disorienting grief of a father's passing, a controversial court injunction that threatened to erase the physical symbols honoring his life's work, and a sudden, undeniable spiritual calling that demanded she pay attention.
It all came together at once.
It did.
In an era where we are constantly bombarded with the message that national macropolitics, presidential elections, federal legislation, international treaties are the only things that truly dictate our lives, Leah's story is a profound wake-up call.
It definitely shifts the perspective.
It suggests that perhaps the most intense, the most deeply personal, and certainly the most vicious battles are actually the ones happening right in our own local backyards. Or, in Leah's case, the backyard she thought she had left behind when she moved over the Fort River Bridge.
It proves that local politics is not just about zoning permits and trash collection.
No, it is the arena where our deepest community values are aggressively contested.
And it serves as a stark reminder of how incredibly thin the veil truly is between a quiet, insulated private life and all-consuming public warfare.
So as we wrap up this exploration of how one woman found her voice, I want to leave you with a thought to mull over. What would it take for you to step out of your comfort zone, willingly face down an organized, angry online hive, risk your professional reputation, and permanently change the trajectory of your life?